All right, so new layer, cloud paintings. I've been obsessed with nature's natural lighting, natural elements, atmospheric paintings, painting clouds. You know, when I was sitting in quarantine in Taiwan, not quarantine, not quarantine, quarantine, not quarantine, oh, well. Anyways, a lot of these are done in quarantine, not all of them, but it's something interesting when you paint when you're painting clouds, which would teach us a lot about painting a lot of things. You know, the color changes between the blues and the whites are actually very subtle. The color changes in nature are far more subtle than we imagine them to be. Normally, when we look at, let's just say, if I'm looking at a picture like this, I might as well import this. Okay, to Procreate, I'm going to import. Insert et photo. Okay. In a way, our world is a lot more monochromatic than we think. Trying to pick a good example. Okay, maybe this one. I'll use this as a starting point. Okay, so let's just pretend I'm gonna use the same layer. I'm gonna paint like a very crude version of this picture on the right. Okay, and a lot of times when we look at a picture like this on the left, we think like here with it's easy to think, okay, this is just orange, so I'm just going to paint something orangey. I'm gonna pick use my color disc. I'm just gonna pick something orangey like this. Yeah, orange. I'm gonna paint something orange. Okay. Pick the right brush. It's all about the right brush, right? So yeah, I want something orangey like this. Okay, the buildings, they look just gray, so I'm just gonna pick something gray, like that. And the skies, I think, is just blue, so I'm gonna pick something bluish. Oh yeah, something blue, like that, like this. And the sun, I don't even know how to describe the sun. So I guess the sun, I don't even know what it is. I just know that it's orangey. So yeah, I just want to do some orange, maybe, like that. Pretty soon, I don't know about you. Okay, and it's orangey, and I see a lot of yellow, so I'm just gonna do some yellow, like here, like this. Yeah, yellow, and on the bottom, that building over there that looks so brown, I'm just gonna do some brown, like that. Brown. What is brown? Brown is basically dark red, right? So yeah, some brown. Okay, so if you compare the two, I don't know about you, but if I compare it to, I feel like, what? Now I'm totally lost. Okay. I'm totally lost. The painting on the right and on the left, they look nothing like each other. Does that make sense? It has to do with our perception, and it's actually a very complicated issue. This itself could take the whole class to teach, but I want to give you like an intro look to this. The reality is, if I use my color picker, which I just use my finger, and I'm just gonna like point at something like this. This is how you pick colors, like that. The reality is the colors that we see are the colors we see are completely different than the colors we think we see. Okay, what we think we see are are these bright blues, these cyanish blues. Okay, but you see, if I, in Photoshop, you see more of this. Like when you hover over different colors, the color wheel actually jumps like zzz, like that. It kind of responds depending on what color you hover over. Okay, we can't really do that in Procreate. So, but if I pick this color for the sky, that's blue, cyanish blue. But if I pick the same color over here, guess what I get? We're almost at a little bit of a greenish gray. You see? Blue here, blue over here on the right. But now if I pick the same color, let's pick a more blue region, like to the left over here. It's a little bit different, okay? Even places like here, okay, maybe like places like here you get a very similar blue to what's on the right, but it's still different. The right blue there's a lot more yellow to it. That's why it's more cyanish, and the blue to the left is a little bit darker, and there's more purple to it. So what I want to teach you about today is about shifting. Okay, a lot of times all you need to do is shift the color towards something else a little bit, or shift the color to the other way just a little bit, and just that difference alone, you could create there's a whole wonder in that shift, in that tiny little shift. Okay, I'll show you an example of what I mean. Okay, so let's just say I'm gonna start with clouds, right? I'm gonna start with a brand new layer. Okay. I'm gonna grab another image, insert a new file. Oops. Insert photo. Insert photo. So like this. Okay, we'll use this image right here. I painted this, or I started painting this. It's not really finished, but this is like a scene of clouds that I was capturing while I was visiting my dad's home, up in northern Taiwan near Danshui. The way you start out on the bottom like this, that's exactly how I start with every painting. You start rough, you start blurry. Okay, you just want to capture the subtle. That's really the subtlety you're going for, is the subtlety of the tones. How the tones changes, how the color changes from one to another. That's all you're really capturing. You're not capturing a lot of the little details. That comes a lot later. So that's why when I go out and do what they call plein air paintings, I take pictures of what I look at, so that I could, when I leave the place, because I may not have like 2 hours just to sit there and capture everything. I take pictures so that when I leave this, and I spend the scene sitting there for like 20 minutes to just capture this level of detail. That's it. Okay. I go home later and I keep working on it using the pictures that I have. But in this case, my upper details are pretty detailed. Okay. So what I always start out with is, let's just say I want to create a frame first. Okay. A quick frame like this. It's always a good idea to start out by defining what the frame of your drawing is. Any drawing that you create, it's always a good practice. Okay, defining your field of view, that's what we call it, is really crucial. Okay, so I do that first. It's always the first step. Second step is I don't want to leave my canvas or painting in a white. That's a very dangerous place to be. And it makes things very hard. So what I do is I always fill in with some kind of a tone, something like that. And I know you do that, and that's good. Okay, so you fill in with a tone like this. I probably will erase the edge just to make it a little cleaner, like that. Only to not confuse myself. Okay, like this. So what I do next to capture the clouds is I pick, if I didn't know any better, I would just go in with a white. And you know what? Just go in like, okay, I'm going to start painting some white clouds because clouds are white, right? You could kind of do that. To some extent, it actually kind of works. Okay. If you choose to go that route, just take advantage of your Apple Pencil because I would use very light strokes like to paint in the subtleties of the color. Okay. So I wouldn't go in with like pressing hard like yeah like that. Does that make sense? Okay. So, but better yet, what I do is I pick this color. So this is like a cyanish blue, right? I then shift it to the white, just a tap, somewhat. And this, obviously, you have to like play with it, a lot. But essentially, I shift my color from where I am towards the white. So, which means towards the top left. Okay. And then I start putting down some big major tones like this. Okay. Like that. Maybe something blurry like this. Okay. With a big brush. Now I'm going to shift that color even more to the white. So pretend if the white is like a white hole that you almost never want to touch except for on very special occasions. But you do want to get as close to the white as possible. And as you're getting whiter and whiter, because whiter means things get brighter, right? So as you get whiter, then you start to paint in the parts that you think is going to catch the most sunlight, like that. Okay. But that white, that super light blue color is not going to color everything. Does that make sense? It's not going to do that. It's only going to eat up like the part of your clouds that's catching the most sunlight. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so let me explain a bit more. Because you're always assuming that sunlight there is coming in from some direction. Okay, so I guess I'll sketch it on the outside so you can see better. So in this case, my sunlight I want it to come in this way. Boom, like that. So if that's the case, so that I suppose that's one of the steps you have to decide before you paint any clouds or any objects. Where is the sunlight coming from? So having said that, I shifted from this blue in the background, this beautiful blue, more to the white, more to the white, more to the white. Okay, so now I'm getting so close to the white, I might as well just go full on white. But now when I'm at this full on white spot, I'm gonna lower it. I'm gonna make this brush size even smaller. It's basically like adding highlights. I'm only adding some spots that I think is going to catch like maximum sunlight. Usually it's close to the top left, like that. Okay. Okay. So that's how I would start capturing things like clouds. This is how I start to render a scene of clouds. So far, does that make sense? Okay. So I get something like this blurry. I might want to add something a little bit. I want to use, so I use my color picker a lot. I start to pick out colors that are in the middle. These are more of my mid-tone, relatively speaking, more mid-tone colors. I might add something here. I always start with kind of a gray, but it's not, this is not exactly a gray. It's more like a, it's more like a bluish gray. Okay. And then I start to pick out my lighter colors, give it a little lighting, and then I turn on my maximum white. Just dot it left and right. Okay. At this point, I haven't used any of my fancy brushes. That makes this happen. Okay. But you can already start to see the form start to develop. Does that make sense? Okay. Next thing I'll do is I'll start to add a little bit of detail. One way to add detail is I go into the darker tones like here. Oh, this is like a middle-ish tone. And I started adding details to cut up the smooth edges, you know, of the clouds. So I give it a little bit more definition, a little bit more information like that. Okay. You back out. Oh, it's starting to look kind of interesting. Of course, it's a lot better if you paint on the spot. That's, you know, because that then you get to practice on actually looking at the shapes and capturing those shapes. So right now I'm painting out of my imagination. I'm picking the darker tones to cut into the lighter tones to give it more more or less of a detail like that. So that's one way to add detail. Cutting, picking out darker colors and giving more sharp, cutting in and giving a more sharper crop, if you will, like that. That's one way. Okay. The other way is to pick out your light tones, in this case, like almost white. Okay. And you add to it. You can add to it by using just regular pencils. You could do a lot with regular pencils in a painting situation. I mean, at least in Procreate. Okay. You could do that. Or this is when you start to use very the much more fancy brushes. In this case, I use a lot of dry brushes and old brushes. So these are like oil painting simulator brushes. These two, you'll find them in Procreate. We'll guide you to it later, but I use these because they have a way to randomize things, okay, to break things apart. So I'll show you what I mean. When you paint with this, it mixes with everything that comes in its path, like that. Okay. That's kind of cool because all you have to do is give it a little dot, boom, and you have this watery, almost this watery feel. Super cool. I love this kind of brush. And all you have to do is like just touch on places. See, within like 4 to 5 touches, this cloud all of a sudden looks a lot more like, it's like vibrant. Okay. You don't have to do a lot to achieve a lot sometimes. All you have to do, see, I'm like dotting this. I'm literally picking colors and just dotting, experimenting, you see? Like that. So, but to get there, a lot of the groundworks like this, I think should be done first. Then you use the fancy brushes to break things apart and make them look a lot more natural, if you will. Okay. So let's walk through this. Okay. I gave this overall demo, on doing this, but let's walk you through step by step. Okay. So that's basically it. Those are the steps I take to start to develop a scene from a backdrop. It's always It's always necessary to have a backdrop color first, and that color cannot be saturated. It needs to be something pretty middle. We cannot have something that's like super blue to start with. That's gonna look amazing. Like, yeah, blue. Don't do that. I'm not saying you do that. A lot of people do that. So yeah, don't do that. Okay. So yeah, start with a mid-tone, kind of almost a grayish kind of a background, and then you start to work your way either to the dark or, in my case, to the light. Meaning you started brightening things up layer by layer like this. Okay. So